Let's talk about the future of EA Sports college football. Now, an article just hit the internet not too long ago, and one of the vice presidents, I believe, of EA Sports did an interview with somebody over at USA Today talking about kind of the current landscape of EA Sports college football and what they're expecting for the future of the series, as it is here to stay as a yearly release. And he dropped some important info in this article that I think a lot of you will be interested in, so we're going to break it down. And of course, if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe and turn the bell icon on so you don't miss out on any of the important news or updates for both College Football 26 and the future college football games. We do have a big update coming really soon for this game, and you're not going to want to miss out on it. So let's take a dive into the article. It says it's fair to say that college football fans are extremely passionate about their sport, and the same can be said for their video game. There may be no sports video game with as fiery of a fan base than EA Sports college football. Now, of course, the game went dormant due to legal reasons for a long time, and then they came back last year with College Football 25, and the second edition just dropped last month. It's an influential piece of college sports to have this game back, EA Sports Senior Vice President Daryl Holt told USA Today. Even with so much hype, College Football 25 exceeded the company's expectations. Safe to say, considering it was the top-selling video game of 2024 and became the best-selling sports game in US history. There were plenty of things that needed to be fixed or overhauled in the second installment, but it set the bar for the franchise's future. Now, it says here that developers had preached that the game is made for college football fans by college football fans. Traditions, pageantry, and atmosphere are the main pillars for the game. That determination was displayed in last year's release, and those details led to a further desire of wanting more in the latest one. With an open policy for assets, Holt said that EA Sports got a plethora of requests from schools asking if they could get their traditions in the game after seeing how many were in the 2024 edition. So naturally, as they're seeing the success of the game, more schools are wanting to maybe participate more than they did initially, because in the initial release of the game, we still saw that there were a lot of schools that maybe didn't have all of their traditions in there, or every school didn't have their mascot, or they couldn't get to every school in the first year to make them as detailed as possible. And after seeing the success of the game and how people like the game so much, more of these schools are coming forward trying to help EA get even more stuff in the game because they want their school represented the proper way as well. Now, with all the success, this is also what kind of drove the coaches to want to be a part of the game. He said that there was an overwhelming support from coaches to be included in the game, and we saw most of them this year. And he said only 12 head coaches aren't in the game, most notably Bill Belichick, Deion Sanders, and Mario Cristobal. And he says while the North Carolina coach likely won't ever appear in the game given his lack of participation in the Madden franchise, they do feel confident that most of the other coaches will want to be included eventually after seeing everybody else join the game. So that's good news. We could maybe be getting guys like Deion Sanders in the next installment of the game. Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. It says, so far, the EA Sports executives say that CFB 26 has been a success. Production director Christian McLeod told USA Today that there was a heavy emphasis on community feedback to shape the game, and it resulted in a really strong response this year, Dexter said. Now, we're going to back up for a second here because obviously there's been a lot more backlash around the game this year than in the first year, just because the first year everybody's happy to have the game back. Obviously, that game launched with a bunch of problems that they eventually fixed, but it was missing a lot of stuff. Now, what 26 did that was good is they did add some stuff that was missing, like High School and Road to Glory, but while it was good that they added that, a lot of fans didn't like the way they implemented it. And obviously this game launched with some bugs as well, and this game isn't going to be giving the same amount of grace that the original one was because the original one was returning after 11 years. We were just happy to have a game. With this year, some people think the game's better, but there's also a lot of people that say that they prefer 25 better. So was it a success? Yeah, I mean, it's still selling really well. A lot of people are playing it, but there's also, I think, been more criticism around the game this year than last year, so I just kind of wanted to include that in there. Now, what's next for EA Sports College Football? We're going to talk about that in this part of the article, but really quickly, here's a word from today's video sponsor. One thing I loved as a kid and honestly still love today is opening up sports cards. It's just the thrill of never knowing what you're going to get. And that brings us to today's sponsor, Arena Club. Arena Club has this thing they call slab packs. It's basically a way to open up cards digitally. It's the new way to open up sports cards. So here's how it works. You open up a slab pack, your card is revealed, and after that, you've got a few options. You can put it in your vault on the site for selling or trading later on the site with other members. You could sell it back to Arena Club instantly. They give you what's called an instant offer. So if it's a card that you just don't want, they will give you pretty close to market value right away. And that's by far my favorite thing about Arena Club, because I've dealt with sports cards a lot in the past, having to look up what stuff's worth, then having to list it, having to wait for it to sell. Sometimes it just takes a long time. I love that I can just sell it back to them instantly and pretty much get what it's worth. Now, your third option is if you like the card, you could actually retrieve it and they will mail it to you. In fact, this Jaden Daniels card I pulled in my last sponsorship video with Arena Club. You can go back and look at the video, and I'm a huge Jaden Daniels fan, so I said, you know what? I'm actually going to keep this. I want this mailed to me, and shortly after that, it was at my doorstep. Arena Club is the most trusted name in the game. They offer full transparency, showing every card in the pack with the likelihood of pulling each one, so you know exactly what's available before you buy. And of course, they're going to be hooking you all up. Right now, you can get 20% off of your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/RayWeather and use code RayWeather. I use Arena Club all the time. I love it, and I really think you will too. Continuing on here, it says, even with favorable reviews and solid additions, there's still part of the fan base that aren't exactly thrilled with the new game, which is what I was just alluding to. Whether it's uniforms, game mechanics, or game mode features, it speaks to how critical its audience can be. A recent update to the game finally fixed some concerns, but there's still a good amount still unhappy. So it's important that they're mentioning this here. I like that they're mentioning this. That means they know that, hey, there's still other things that we want that's not being done the way we want them. So it's good that they're aware of this. It says here, EA Sports understands how much criticism it gets, and they actually enjoy hearing it. Dexter calls it incredible problems to have with a dedicated group of players that want so much more added. The critiques help mold the game and aid the plan and how it advances the series. It's why as the development team was wrapping up on College Football 26, it was already planning what's going into College Football 27, with EA Sports as invested in keeping the franchise going for years to come. We have to continue to innovate, Holt said. We can't just rest on our laurels and make minor improvements. We have to make substantial improvements and invest over multiple years for some things that we can do differently. The production of the next game has begun, and while EA Sports executives didn't tip their hand about changes in the summer of 2026, it did give a vision of what could eventually arrive. Holt said about every 10 years, a paradigm shift happens in sports video games where there are substantial upgrades in how they operate. That shift is approaching soon, and he believes it's going to result in some big changes. Now, let me interject here. What he's probably talking about are, I would think, the next generation of consoles, because if you think about it, we're probably about 2 years away at most from the PS6 and whatever the next Xbox is going to be called, because the current systems we have now, they launched in 2020, I believe, the end of 2020 around holiday time. So 2 years from now, that'll be about 7 years. And that's typically when we see new consoles, is every 7 years. And definitely with sports games, every time we go to a new console generation, that's where you typically tend to see it make the most steps forward. Whereas, I would say, especially with EA games, every other year you tend to see a decent step forward, whereas the years in between, they're kind of just building on what they did the year before. But still, from year to year with sports games, you're never usually seeing these massive leaps unless you jump out, 4 to 5 years really, and definitely every console generation. So he's probably talking about where they're planning to go when the new console is released, because every time you go to a new generation, you have a lot more power to work with, you have more memory to work with, you have better hardware, and it really allows you to do more things. Continuing on here, it says, he noted among the enhancements could be more accurate player likeness and improvements in stadium building, which could one day lead to allowing players to make their own stadiums. It was once a past feature in the NCAA football series, and in Team Builder School Creator, there are only generic stadiums players can use. There's no rest for the weary, Holt said. We are having a conversation daily, and we're thinking about the game and how we're going to adapt and evolve it just about every moment we can. You don't get to just take a day off from creating. They will get more authentic and real, not just in visuals, but in how things operate and what you can do in the games. The gameplay will get more realistic, more control for our players, and immersive. And then all the things that surround it, on the field and off the field, he added. Now let me just interject here and talk about what some of this means. First, when they talk about more accurate player likeness, this is an area that EA has gotten a lot of feedback on over the past few years, or a lot of criticism, as sometimes their player models just don't look the most accurate, and they have gotten a lot better over the last few years. But things from some of the faces to the body types to the equipment, there's been a lot more criticism about that in the last few years. So is an area they need to get better, and as we move to newer consoles, I think we could see the best player likeness we've ever seen in both college football and Madden, so that's a good thing. They also talk about stadium improvements, and a lot of this is going to be in textures and in lighting, because I feel like stadiums already look pretty good, but they're obviously only going to get better and better and more detailed. But they talk about Stadium Creator. Now this is something we had on older hardware, but if you bring a feature like this back, you have to do it right. Obviously, we could do this on PS2, but we're not going to expect PS2 level Stadium Creator. If they're bringing a Stadium Creator, which is something I've heard be a rumor for the last couple of years, this is for sure something we're getting sooner rather than later, especially, for college football and Team Builder and stuff like that, but it should also be in Madden. They're going to bring back a Stadium Creator that's actually in depth, because if you look at how Team Builder is, like, compare Team Builder to just a regular Creative Team that we had back on the PlayStation. Team Builder is a lot more in depth than what Creative Team was, and I think whenever they bring a new Stadium Creator, especially if they're doing it like on next gen potentially, they're going to make that much more in depth than what the old one was, and it's going to be, I would think, pretty detailed. So it's cool to hear them actually mention it in this article, because that's definitely something that is going to be coming at some point. And they also specifically mentioned how the game's going to be more realistic. Obviously, the gameplay for Madden has gotten a lot better over the last few years. You know, some people prefer the older style of like the PlayStation gameplay better. Some people prefer current style better. You know, that's really up to you, but they're going to keep making it as realistic as possible. Obviously, the further we go, the better they're going to try to make that. But they specifically mention on and off the field, because we have heard that some type of open world is going to be coming to these games eventually. They're doing it in the soccer game. They said they're going to be doing it for their American football games as well. So maybe that is something they're waiting for next gen to roll out on a more powerful console. We'll have to see how that plays out. I mean, in 2K, some people love it. Some people absolutely hate it at this point. We'll see how it works out in college and in Madden. But they mentioned on and off the field for a reason. That is something that is going to be coming eventually. Moving on in the article here, it says, what's nice is after spending so many years trying to get the game to come back, now it's a multi-year approach where there's constant development and planning on not just one game, but several down the road. The future talk of the franchise could give fans optimism of where the game goes, but the executives know that they can't just talk about it. There is such a high demand for this game to be great. Sometimes speaking is not enough. We've got to be able to come and show them exactly what they want and that we've listened. And that really is how they kind of approach things, because a lot of times stuff you see come to both college or Madden, it's not something that they just did in the last cycle, which is like the last 9 months that they worked on the new game. Some of this stuff is, you know, been worked on for 2 or 3 years because it takes time to get this stuff ready. So some years you see a lot more stuff coming to the game than in other years, and you're thinking, well, why they do so much this year but not last year? Well, it's because maybe sometimes some of those features were a multi-year thing that they were working on, and now it's finally ready to be released. And so it's kind of important to remember that year to year, you know, the game may make a bigger jump than another, but there's always going to be a point in time where a lot of things that took years to build up are going to kind of come to fruition at one time, and that's usually when you feel the game take a big leap. And I do think, you know, next year should be a big game because it's going to be the 3rd installment, and like I said, every other year I feel like with EA you notice a bigger jump than the years in between. But as we get to next gen consoles, I think we're going to see some pretty big jumps for both games, especially with all of the rumors and stuff that they're working on. I think it's going to be pretty interesting to see where these games are in a few years. Now, if you want to know about some really cool hidden features in College Football 26 that I guarantee you don't know about, make sure to check out this video right here on the screen.